Wow, I look so pale and vampiric in this video. Good morning. My name is Camden and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a little book haul. I have really been doing my best to rein in my spending on books this year. I feel like the past couple of years my spending on books became a bit egregious, so I'm really trying to keep that under control this year by utilizing my local library. I also have a couple different apps that I use to get my audiobooks and my ebooks. Scribd, Libby. Libby is free, Scribd is a monthly subscription. So I've been turning to those a lot. But if you saw my video last week, you know that it is my birthday. My birthday was on May 16th. So I did end up treating myself a little bit as a result because it's my birthday month. Wanted to get myself something nice, you know? So yeah. We have a couple of Greek mythology retellings. We have a lot of thrillers because I've really been in the mood for a good thriller lately and I couldn't find any on my shelf that were really calling my name. So I bought some new ones, and then I have a couple of dark gothic YA fantasy books. So let's just hop straight into the books that I bought. The first book that I have is Elektra by Jennifer Saint. This is the author of Ariadne, which I read at the beginning of the year and enjoyed pretty well. Well enough that I wanted to pick up her next book, which obviously centers around the character of Elektra. Based on the description of this one, it looks like it follows a few different women who are in one way or another kind of wrapped up in the saga of the Trojan War. We are following Clytemnestra, who is the wife of Agamemnon. We're following Princess Cassandra of Troy, and we are following Agamemnon's youngest daughter, Elektra. I think this one is going to be really great. It reminds me of The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, so I'm excited to pick this one up. In the same vein and in the exact same color scheme, we also have The Wolf Den by Elodie Harper. This one follows a brothel that is in ancient Pompeii and the women who are, for one reason or another, forced to live and work in this brothel. I have to say, I really appreciate how these women authors who are entering into the Greek mythology space are taking back the narrative from men who really dominated this type of storytelling at the time and are giving voices back to the women of this time period. I think it's great, and I'm really enjoying reading them all. Keep up the good work, ladies. Okay, moving into the thrillers, which is definitely the biggest selection that I have. The first book that I have is The Younger Wife by Sally Hepworth. Sally Hepworth is a favorite author of mine. I've read 3 of her books and really enjoyed them, so I'm excited to pick up the newest one. This book follows a man who is looking to obtain a divorce from his current wife in order to marry his much younger fiance. It follows the perspectives of all 4 women: his current wife, his fiance, and his 2 daughters, as they are kind of navigating these family dynamics and also uncovering some secrets about each other. I was under the impression that the current wife was suffering from dementia or something else that was preventing her from like being able to sign the divorce papers, but now I can't find that piece anywhere, so I don't know if I made that up or if I read that somewhere and I just can't find it again. So possible dementia, unconfirmed, not really sure. Either way, very excited to read this one in the near future. The next book that I have is The Good Lie by A.R. Torre. This book centers around a serial killer called the Bloody Hearts Killer. We are following a psychiatrist who has built her career on profiling killers, and she is convinced that the man that was captured and put behind bars for the crime is the killer. However, we're also following the perspective of the killer's defense attorney, who also happens to be the father of one of the Bloody Heart Killer's victims. And he is convinced that the man behind bars is innocent. This one sounds like it's going to be super twisty and dramatic, and I'm really excited to read it because I haven't read anything from this author since reading The Girl in 6E several years ago. I also picked up Every Last Secret by A.R. Torre. This one follows 2 women who live next door to each other. Kat has what appears from the outside to be the perfect life, and Nina is somewhat of a social climber who is set on getting everything that Kat has, including her husband. This one sounds like it's going to be a very interesting domestic thriller, so I'm excited to read this one as well. And look how beautiful this cover is. Am I right? The next book that I have is Near the Bone by Christina Henry. I believe this one is actually categorized more as a horror than a thriller, but I've been really excited to read this one ever since it came out last year. This book follows a woman named Maddie who is living in a remote area of the mountains with a man named William. Maddie is just doing her best to survive the two different evils in her life. The first is an enormous creature that has been stalking the area surrounding her home, and the second is the very abusive man that she's forced to live with. I have heard that this book is super fast paced as well as very atmospheric and transportive, and I'm really excited to dive into it. Part of me really wants to wait until it's like the winter months again so I can really have the full experience with all the wintry vibes, but I don't think I'll be able to wait that long. So speaking of winter, the next book that I have is The Witch Hunter by Max Seeck. I am going to just read the back cover of this one to you because it's described so well and succinctly that I don't think I could do it better if I tried. A best-selling author's wife has been found dead in a gorgeous black evening gown, sitting at the head of an empty dining table. Her most chilling feature, her face is frozen in a ghastly smile. At first, it seems as though a deranged psychopath is reenacting the gruesome murders from the Witch Hunt trilogy, bestsellers written by the victim's husband. But investigator Jessica Niemi soon realizes she's not looking for a single killer, but rather dozens of believers in a sinister form of witchcraft who know her every move and are always one step ahead. Doesn't that sound amazing? I think this one is going to be so spooky and I'm really excited. Next, I have In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. Just like everyone else, I'm perturbed by the fact that there are scissors on the cover of a book titled about knives. This book follows 6 friends who are attending a college reunion where someone is set on figuring out who killed Jessica Miller 10 years ago. The plot sounds a little generic and similar to what a lot of other thrillers are doing with the whole solving a murder that happened 10 years ago plot point, but I have heard a ton of good things about this one. Everyone who has read it has had good things to say, so I'm sure there is some originality pumped into this one and hopefully a lot of good plot twists. So yeah, I am excited to read it. The last thriller that I have in this pile is We Are All the Same in the Dark by Julia Heaberlin. This book follows a girl who went missing in a very small town, and 10 years later, her brother ends up finding another missing girl near his house. She is unable to speak and missing one eye, but he takes her appearance as a sign from his sister. And together, he and a young female detective in the town are trying to solve both disappearances. I have not heard anything about this book, and if I'm being completely honest, the cover is kind of what drew me to this one, but I still have high hopes. On to the fantasy segment of this video. The first one that I have is All Our Hidden Gifts by Carolyn O'Donoghue. This book follows a girl named Maeve who's very talented at giving tarot readings. When her ex-best friend Lily ends up disappearing, she and some other kids from her school end up trying to combine all of their magical gifts in order to bring her back. I'm most interested in the tarot aspect of this book because I haven't read any books that kind of deal with tarot, and I think it would be a really cool element to have in a fantasy novel, so I'm excited to read this one, and me and my friend Aubrey are gonna do a little book club moment and read this one together. Next, I have A Far Wilder Magic by Allison Saft. This book follows a girl named Margaret who is intent on entering herself into a contest to hunt down the legendary Hulla. Unfortunately, you can only enter the contest with a 2-person team, so she ends up forming an unlikely alliance with a boy who is a bit of an outcast in town as well, and the adventures only begin from there. I've heard that this one has a pretty dark and gothic backdrop to it, which is what I'm most excited for, and I think, though I have not fully confirmed, that the Hulla is part of Serbian mythology, so perhaps this one draws from that as well. I'm not entirely sure, but either way, I'm really excited to read this one. I think it looks really fun, and another one that I just love the cover. Like, who can resist? Okay, the last fantasy book that I have before I'm gonna open my book of the month box for you is The Bone Archer by Sara A. Mueller. I'm gonna read this one aloud to you as well. Tucked away behind a notorious house of ill repute, there is a garden where the trees are grown from bones and nourished by the darkest of secrets. The clattering, ghastly harvest is tended by the women who live and work at Orchard House. Charm, the madam, and her haunting beautiful charges shame, justice, desire, pride, and pain. except on Tuesdays when the Emperor alone calls at Orchard House to see his personal concubine, until the day he summons Charm instead to the palace to charge her with his dying decree. Choose which of his horrible sons will inherit the empire by discovering which one has been responsible for his murder. If she completes this final task, she will be freed from a life of bondage and servitude. Torn between the Emperor's will and the whispers of her own ghosts, Charm must choose justice for an empire she hates or vengeance at the cost of her own freedom. This one sounds really dark and twisted, and I'm into it. Probably gonna read in October though. Okay, and lastly, I have my Book of the Month box to open. The last one actually got sent back to Book of the Month, which was very upsetting. I guess my mail lady wasn't sure it was me living here, so she sent it back. Okay, the first book that I have in here is The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. This one is one of my most anticipated of the year, specifically because it really reminds me of Mexican Gothic. Yes, Mexican Gothic meets Rebecca in this debut supernatural suspense novel. I guess I was right. I believe this one is like a haunted house story, but set in Mexico. I don't know much more about it than that, and I don't want to. I think it's horror or suspense, I'm not really sure, but I'm very excited to read it. Next is The Siren Queen by Nghi. This one, I believe, follows a girl who is trying to sell her soul to be able to make it in old Hollywood. Again, I don't know a lot going into Book of the Month books, and I prefer it that way. So that is basically all I know about this one, but it was enough for me to want to pick it up. And the last book that I picked up is Book of Night by Holly Black. This book is about glow-mists, which are magicians who manipulate shadows, I believe. I'm sure it has that very signature Holly Black urban fantasy type feel where we're really seeing the real world collide with the magical worlds. I really have loved every Holly Black book that I have ever read. I'm always happy when I find an author that I can enjoy from childhood all the way into my adulthood. It's nice having authors that kind of grow up with you. So, like with every other one, I'm excited to read it. Thank you so much for clicking on this video, and if you're all the way at the end, thank you so much. Since you're here and you made it all the way to the end, you might as well leave a comment, possibly subscribe, maybe even send to a friend. I would really appreciate it. Anyway, thank you so much. I will see you next week with a new video. Goodbye.